Okay, for those that are joining me, whether they're on YouTube or on Facebook or wherever you're at in the world, I've been gathering some of my friends together because I have the most interesting collection of friends around the world. And I think they're people that you need to know and to hear their stories. And frankly, this Irishman has told so many stories over so long. I'm tired of hearing me. And I know that's hard to believe, Chris, if you listen to this. But we first met. This is Chris Murphy I'm talking to, who goes by other names, if you know him by one of his other official title names. But Chris and I and his brother, twin brother, Dan, I believe we met back in 2008 or 2009 in San Diego or Encinitas or someplace in California.
Mm.
And
2008, I believe.
yeah, so okay, 2000. So that's 12 years. For you, that's a long time, a percentage of your life. For me, that's yesterday. I mean, I got sweaters older than that, right? So we've enjoyed some interesting experiences together. We were just talking before I started recording this, where one of our sojourns to Southern California, we went to the desert on a horse with no name. No, that's another story. But we went to the desert in a pickup truck that I owned, that I believe Dan had to sit in the back in this. It was a little tiny seat in the back. Anyway, long story. We're riding down or coming back from 29 Palms or Joshua Tree. It was
Joshua
a retreat.
Tree.
Yeah, it was a retreat down there for Yoga Rush. And I'm singing this song about, summertime and living's easy, and your mama's good looking and all this kind of stuff. And you guys started harassing me like, come on, you're making up this song. I said, no, that was a hit like in the 1960s and then the 1970s. And you guys were just putting me down. And then I think either you or I or somebody just happened to turn on my truck radio and fool around with the stations to get a clear one. And there's that song playing on the radio probably for the first time in 35 years. And so that's the kind of relationship we have, because it's kind of like, it's always kind of in sync. If we take a hike together or we go to Mount Shasta or we go to, some retreat or something, there's always some unusual happenstance. Mm-hmm. And one of those things was, I was either with you, I believe, or your brother when we went up to Napa Valley up in the mountains at an ashram up there. I believe, was that you, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay. So you know what? You got to forgive me. I'm at that age. Since you guys are identical twins, I always have trouble anyway. So we're up there and I'm introducing him, and it didn't take much to introduce him. There's Srimad. Boom, there you are talking. And the white sadhu, Swamiji, whatever his name is. And we're at this beautiful retreat, and we're staying at this carriage house that in this property that used to belong to the actor Steve McQueen. And in this carriage house where he used to work on his racing cars, his sports cars and stuff. And we had beds in there. We were staying, spending the night. So it was kind of cool. But we went up there to Shrima, and she just opened up a conversation with you. She starts talking to you. And at that point, she asks you if she can give you a name. And that's where we're going to take this from, because that leads right into the story and leads us to India. So take us from that point when she asks you if she can gift you a name.
Sure. Yeah, so we met this female saint at, was it Srima and Swami Satyananda's? Wasn't that who it is? Swami Satyanandagiri? No, Swami Satyananda Saraswati, I think. And so she gives me the name Nandi, which I found unusually insightful, because this leads into the story that Bill wanted me to tell today. That, what was it? When did we go see? It must have been 2013 or 2014.
Yeah, right around there.
Like that, soon after 2012. So in 2012, my brother and I were in India. And one of the strange things that had happened to us, maybe a year or 2 years before I'm sitting here in front of this female saint. And one of the kind of peculiar things that happened on a very long day, which had 3 or 4 completely unexplainable, kind of beyond normal events happen. And this one happened earlier in the morning, which is with a bull. So for those watchers who aren't familiar, Nandi is the name of the bull that Shiva rides upon, right? Nandishwar. So in front of all the Shiv temples, there's has to be a statue of Nandi because he's the foremost devotee of Shiv. And he's always in a particular posture. He usually, I think it's the left hoof is out and the right one is in, and is bowing his head towards the Shivlingam inside the Shiv temple. So my brother and I at the time, we were in the city of Nasik in central India, Madhya Pradesh. And we had been there for a few days. And this was an important day. This is one of the bathing days for the big Mahakumbh. It was like a once every 108 year Kumbh Mela. It was a huge one. And there were a lot of crazy events happened with us that day, but this one happened early in the morning where we went to go pay obeisance to one of the smaller, not really even a Shiv temple. It was a lingam that had been set up. You had to kind of go down these stairs to this lingam that was on this this bathing ghat. So we were at a ghat, I think it was called Ram Kund. It's associated with where Ram bathed to purify himself of the sins of killing all the Kshatriyas. And Shiva himself is said to have originally established this bathing place. I think it's an off branch of the Saraswati River. So we go down to pay our obeisance this morning to the Shivlingam. And this place is packed. I mean, you can see it's shoulder to shoulder. This is one of the big bathing days for this particular holy spot. This is where people go when their family members die to do the final offerings and do the purifications. That's why Nasik is so special. And we went down to pay our obeisance to the Shivlingam. And when we were coming back up, it was a very peculiar thing. We had been very attentive to the Shiv temples in this area. Sometimes some of the holy places in India can have issues with things like pollution and trash. So my brother and I we were sleeping on the front steps of a Shiv temple that was in this little town in Nasik. We were sleeping there for a few nights. And so we had cleaned the whole temple. We had swept it, we had cleaned it, dusted everything, put all the trash up. We bought broom, swept the walkway up into the Shiv temple. And the Brahmin family that oversaw the temple eventually just kind of gave us free reign to stay in there and be there as long as we wanted. So we had been I'm saying this just to kind of show that we had done some work. This wasn't necessarily like a spontaneous experience. My brother and I were kind of really being devout Shaivites at this point in our life, devout Shiva worshippers. And so we were attending to some of the temples in this little river town. You know, it's a little town built around this bathing ghat where the river flows through. After having done this for a few days, the morning of this big bathing day happens. And so we get up in the morning, we go to one of the big famous Jyotirlingams. The Jyotirlingams are one of 12 famous Shiv temples in India, established by Shankar, I believe. We went to one of the big ones, Trambakeshwar, which is said to be kind of the centermost or the essence of all the Jyotirling temples. It's outside of Nasik. So we had started the morning going to Trambakeshwar. When we got back into our little river town, we went to this nice small little Shivlingam you have to go down some steps into. And we had bought a bunch of flowers. We decorated the whole thing. And when we came up the steps, there was a bull. And he was just standing there. And so these steps, they're not very large. I mean, the steps maybe 5-6 feet across to go down into this little spot is maybe 5 or 6 steps, maybe 10. Just enough for my brother and I to go down, pay obeisance to the Shivlingam and come back up. There's people everywhere, and there's a bull, and he's standing right there in front of us. And if you've ever been in India and seen the bulls, for one, the cows and bulls are very different in India. It's a different species. But aside from that, they get decked out a lot of times. The horns get painted, the religious things get drawn on the forehead. The bull's wearing flowers. So this is a decked out bull, right? This bull looks beautiful. He's got the trident inscribed on his forehead. His horns have been painted. He's got a flower garland around him. So my brother and I think, well, this is auspicious. This is like Nandi, you know, we just paid obeisance to Shiva. So we come out and we both touch foreheads with this bull. And the bull still stands there, and he does, I don't know why we felt like he was motioning us to come with him, but he kind of does this, you know, like come on thing with his head. So I grab one of his horns and my brother grabs the other one. And this bull escorts us. Now, what's so interesting, this is one of the bathing days. So this kund, this bathing area is inconceivably packed. People are shoulder to shoulder. We had to walk maybe 100 yards, but to get to where the little Shiv temple was that we were staying. But to get there, we had to work our way through this ocean of people and cross this little narrow bridge at one part over the river to get to the Shiv temple we were staying at. And this bull, we just grabbed this bull's horns and everyone starts parting. Everyone starts making way for this big bull. And since my brother and I are holding the horns, and we look like good Hindus at this point. We got the markings on our forehead. We're both wearing dhotis and we both got the sangatis on, and really we're all dressed up too with Rudraksha. And we're holding the horns of this bull. This bull leads us. We don't lead it. It actually takes the lead. And the whole crowd starts to part. And we're just walking at a nice leisurely speed. And at this point, everything goes quiet. It was the most peculiar thing. Everything goes quiet. And Dan and I look around, everyone has cameras up. I mean, there's an ocean of cameras. Everybody has cameras up recording this. So somewhere there's footage of this in India. I don't know who has it, but somewhere there's many pictures or videos of this event happening. This bull takes us, leads us over the bridge. And so the bridge goes up over the bathing area. So everyone in the bathing area can see what is happening. There's maybe, 9 or 10,000 people within eye shot. Everyone can see this and everyone can see what's happening. And so it's like getting very quiet and people are watching this just peculiar event unfold. And we're kind of up here looking down at everybody. The bull takes us across the bridge, takes us all the way up to the temple that we had been staying at, kneels beside the Nandi statue, right? So remember I said that the statue of the bull is there in front of all the Shiv temples, kneels in the exact same way that Nandi is, that the statue is, and he's the size of the statue. I mean, it's as though the statue came to life, kneels beside the statue and looks inwards towards the temple. And then at this point, the Brahmin family that oversees the Shiva temple is there. And so they unlock the inner sanctum of the temple where normally only the Brahmins can be. And they call us in, they kick everybody out of the Shiv temple. They call my brother and I in and put us in where the Brahmins, only the Brahmins are allowed to be, right at the Shiv lingam. And they lock us in. They actually close the door and they tell us, like, when you want to come out, just knock. But otherwise, the temple is yours for as long as you want it. And so my brother and I stayed in there meditating for a few hours behind a locked door in this inner sanctum of the Shiv temple, right there with this beautiful Jyotirlingam, or this beautiful lingam. It wasn't one of the Jyotirlingams, but the lingam had been built up 3 or 4 times. It was like an 800-year-old Shiv lingam, 900-year-old Shiv lingam, beautiful marble. I have a picture of it somewhere. And so we sat there meditating. And that was just one of several very strange events that happened on that particular day.
Well, it was interesting because she never heard that story. I never heard that story until later on that day when I asked you, why did she give you that name? She only met you for less than a minute when she was already saying, I want to give you this spiritual name. Do you mind? And so that court or inquiry later on that evening, and you told me that story. And then you got deeper into another story on that trip, which is the next one I want to follow up on, where you had a dream before you guys left. You were looking for somebody, you didn't know who it was. Can you take us on that beginning of the journey and how that progressed?
Sure. So we'll rewind. The story that I just shared, we'd probably been in India for 2 or 3 weeks at that point. But the story you're mentioning actually begins before we even left to India. It begins the night before. So of course we're excited and ready to head over to India for the first time. And I believe it was 2012, early 2012. And I go to sleep and this female saint appears in my dreams. I don't really want to share any names just because she is a little bit of a controversial figure, as is the case with many popular saints. But she appears in my dream. And in this dream, she walks, a beautiful, beautiful woman comes in. She has all her devotees with her. I'm in this room. She comes and sits on a couch in between my brother and I. And she rests her head very lovingly on my shoulders. And then she rests her head very lovingly on my brother's shoulders. And then she gets up, she jumps up almost like an excited little girl and turns around and says, when you get to India, find me. Make sure it's first thing you do. When you get to India, come see me. Okay. And then she leaves the room. And I woke up and I recorded the dream because I kept a good dream journal at that time. So I relate this experience to Dan. We talk about it a little bit on the plane ride over into Mumbai. And we had this idea, partly because of this dream, that since the trip was largely going to be connected to Shiva, we were going to try to see 3 of the Jyotirlingams in central India as part of our trip. We should begin by connecting with the Divine Mother. And Mumbai, there's a big temple in Mumbai, Mumbai Devi Temple, that's kind of the Divine Mother of the city. And it's one, biggest city in India, one of the largest in the world. So when we get to Mumbai, after a horrible first night's sleep and getting used to being in a completely different country for the first time in my life, we decided to try to find Mumbai Devi Temple. And trying to find anything in India can be a little hard sometimes because all the rickshaw drivers and everybody says they know exactly where they're going and no one knows where anything is. But we do eventually get the Mumbai Devi Temple. We go and we pay our respects and get some prasad. And as we're leaving, I don't know, it makes me look, I look over at one of the walls, one of the outer walls to the temple. And there's a little picture there. And on this picture is the female saint that came to me in that dream. So I walk over there, I said, I grab my brother. I said, look, oh my gosh, I mean, this is ridiculous. And so we go up and we grab it. Her name isn't on it, but I turn it over, there's just an address. So all I have right now, I have a picture of this woman's face at a temple of the Divine Mother and just an address on the other end. So we said, okay, let's try to go to this address. We hire a taxi driver and go all the way to the other side of Mumbai. We're driving round and round. We spend maybe 30, 45 minutes driving around these few neighborhoods because the driver, he's just exasperated. Right? Of course, he said he knows where he's going, but he didn't. But he knows we're in the area. He just doesn't know exactly where this address is. Finally, he's a very, very sweet fellow. After 30, 45 minutes driving around in circles, he just looks back and pleads with us. And he's like, he tells us, I'm not going to charge you for the trip, right? I'm not going to charge you for the drive, but I can't spend any more time trying to find this place. I need to get to other customers. And so we say, okay, that's fine. That's fine. We get out of the taxi. Okay. So we're out of the taxi. We've gotten here for free, which was amazing in and of itself. We're out of the taxi. And we have no idea where we are. We're in some neighborhood in Mumbai. We take about 5 or 6 steps and turn a corner, and there this building is. There the address is that was on the back of this card. We go in. It's kind of like quite a nice home. It was not necessarily huge, but it was tall. It had several floors to it. And we go in, try to find someone who can talk English, which was a journey in and of itself. And there's a huge food bar. So the whole bottom floor of this ashram, it's kind of an ashram. It's not really an ashram. It's like a residence. The whole bottom floor is open to the public. And so they can go in there and they can eat. Anybody who's poor, anybody who has a hard time finding food, there's a limitless buffet that one of this female saint's richer devotees pays for. And it's breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can go in there and eat. And you never have to pay anything. You don't need to leave a donation. And so the whole bottom floor is it's open for all of this saint's followers to come and sit and talk and have community. We get there and find out a few things. For one, find out my brother and I are the first white people to ever come try to have darshan of this saint. We're the first Westerners ever, first English speakers to try to come have darshan of her. And second thing we find out is that, regretted to inform us, we were talking to kind of the property manager a little bit. He was the one who just kind of managed the day in, day out stuff. He said, I regret to inform you, but she only comes out of samadhi once every 2 weeks, right? For one evening, more or less, or one day every 2 weeks, she comes out of samadhi. And if you don't come on that day, you're not going to see her. It doesn't matter. And so I told the fellow, I said, well, you're wrong. She'll come out of samadhi for us because she came to me in a dream and she told me to come see her. She wouldn't have told me to come see her. She wasn't going to see me. So the guy kind of laughed it off and said, okay, well, you can wait around and eat some food and stuff and enjoy yourself. So we go and my brother and I go sit and we do our sadhana, we do our spiritual practice leaning up against one of the walls there. It takes 2-3 hours. We come out of meditation and there's like 40-50 people sitting around us with intense interest, wondering who are these two Westerners sitting here meditating. None of us know them. How did they get here? How did they even find this place? And after a few back and forth, we find someone who speaks really good English, who is a college student, and then we begin to have conversations with everybody through that. And ends up being all kinds of things happen. We spend like 14 hours at this place, okay, that day. After we had been there for 5 or 6 hours, and everybody told us the same thing. We met maybe 100 different devotees throughout the day at this point. Everyone told us the same thing. One of them said even, they say, oh, great sadhus come. They say the prime minister came once, she didn't come out of samadhi. Like, she's not gonna come out of samadhi, right? She just came out a few days ago. It'll be like a week and a half till she comes out again. I said, no, she'll come out for us. And so at this point, some people liked us, some people didn't. That's just how people are. And at one point, one of her devotees comes down, and someone who he's called like Telephone Baba, because he has this ability to communicate telepathically with her while she's in samadhi. And this is actually what I found out is how her devotees would communicate with her. They would sit outside her bedroom door and just pray. And then usually, if it was kind of a yes or no, she would jingle something, like ring a bell or something a little bit to let them know that she heard them, and they would kind of figure out what to do from there. So this is one of the devotees who could do this. He comes down with the sister of this saint. And so this woman's whole family has become her devotees. He comes down with the sister of this saint. And they both come up to Dan and I. And she says, she says, my divine mother, referring to her own sister. I mean, this is the kind of devotion she has. She says, my divine mother knows that you're here and says that if you can wait until midnight, she'll come out at midnight and give darshan. At this place, first, everything's totally quiet because a bunch of jaws drop. Nobody expected this to happen at all. And then after about 5 seconds, everyone's in an uproar. Everyone's on their phone calling everyone they can. And before you know it, there's 500 people crowding this place throughout the course of the night. Just because everyone's like, hey, she's going to give darshan today. So go ahead and call everyone. She's going to give darshan tonight. And she lived at the top of this residence. And so one of the things, not just to share this experience, but I feel in order to maybe properly understand the caliber of the saint, I need to share one of the experiences that I heard while I was there. So like I said, we got there like 10 or 11 in the morning. So we waited maybe 13, almost 14 hours for darshan. In that time, we met everybody's brothers and sisters, everybody's cousins, everybody's friends. I mean, we met everybody. And we became actually on good terms with a lot of people and heard endless stories. I mean, we don't have time today to share even a tenth of all the stories that we heard about this woman. Every single story was mind-numbingly miraculous. But there's one in particular that touched me tremendously, and I feel that it shows the caliber of this. And I think I shared this with you when I first told you about her. One of the younger devotees I met, he was from London, from an Indian family in London, and his whole family was there. His aunts, uncles, everybody were devotee of this woman. And he shares this story about his brother. And so he said, a long time ago, he's saying maybe 10 years before this, before the night we were there, she had left India and done her first, kind of her one and only trip outside of India. She went to London to stay with one of the big Indian communities there and gave darshan and satsang there. And at this event, he and his family were going through a tremendous amount of grief because earlier that year, he had lost his brother in a motorcycle accident. And the whole family just hadn't really quite recovered from this. Everybody was kind of still in shock about it. It was very close to them. And so he had gone with some members of his family because they heard a female saint was in the area and they thought it might uplift everybody's spirits to get a chance to do some satsang with a sadhu. And eventually, somehow, she ends up at their home. by the end of the night. They just kind of moved the conversation. They took the after party somewhere, so to say. They all went to this fellow's family home. They, I think, had some money and kind of had enough space to be able to provide for everybody who wanted to come. Talking a little bit about the brother and kind of, asking for her advice on grief and how to deal with things, stuff like that. And this was around midnight, he said. All of a sudden, when they were sitting around quietly in samadhi, she opened up her eyes and she looked at him. And she looked at the mother, and she said, but she looked at him in particular. She said, would you like to see your brother one last time? And of course, I mean, he was shocked. He's what do you say in that situation? So he just tried to get out some kind of, yes, I do. And then he said, and then she said, at midnight, he'll come. And they sat there quietly because there's only 10, 15 minutes till midnight. Everyone's just sitting there in suspense. And apparently, according to this person's whole family, I met him and I met one or two of his cousins and an uncle while we were there. Everybody had the same story because they were all in the room when this happened. At around midnight, there was a knock on the door, a knock on the front door into the home. And of course, everybody's ghost white now. Midnight just struck. Everyone's ghost white. The brother goes up and opens up the door. And there his deceased brother is, standing in the doorway. And the female saint tells him to come into the home. So he comes into the house. And they sit apparently for hours. This deceased brother, fully alive, fully himself, sits there and cries and hugs all his family members, hugs his mother, sits and shares stories, tells them about the afterlife. I mean, all these things. They have this tremendous thing. Throughout the course of this, they called every family member, every friend of this person. So this was an event witnessed by probably about 100 people, many of which were friends and family of the deceased. And then before the sun rose, as the sun was beginning to rise, she told him that it was time for him to leave now. And so he got up and he left through the front door, and that was that. That was gone. Of course, and he was still, he had tears in his eyes, recalling this story to my brother and I. And so this is just one of the many stories. This is probably the most extreme story I heard, but there's all kinds of stories I heard about this saint that kind of help a little bit paint the caliber of this kind of being.
You told me another story about that same time. Didn't you learn about her going to a river somewhere with a statue in the river, the water or something?
Yeah, she has a statue of Shiva that was gifted to her by the Ganga. She went down with a bunch of disciples to the Ganga River and said, "Oh Ganga," she made some kind of religious proclamation to the river, and out of the river, a like 500-600 pound marble statue, maybe more than that. I saw the statue; it's a large statue, floated to the top of the river and drifted to shore. I mean, but they had to use levees and stuff once it was on shore to get it into a truck and get it back to the residence. But it floated on the surface of the water like it was a feather. And I got to see that statue, a beautiful, beautiful white marble statue. So finally midnight came around and it's quite a thing. I mean, this it was a very religious experience, obviously, for her devotees. There was dancing, there was music, it was like a celebration. And she opens up the doors. You get to go into her room where it's just a bed. It's a small little room. And the room couldn't have been maybe 10 by 10 feet. And the only thing I saw in there was a bed. And she was just sitting on the bed, dressed very beautifully. And everybody was dancing and offering flowers to her, and very, not a person. I will say she's she's the only saint I've ever met, and I've been blessed that I've been able to meet quite a number. She's the only saint I've ever met who didn't seem to have any kind of person left in them. I mean, it's just her eyes were almost black, and there was no, it just didn't seem like there was an identity there at all. It was almost eerie, but it was ecstatically eerie. I mean, the whole environment was charged. And then through a phone to darshan line, went in and saw her, came back out, everybody was singing. And then when everyone came back out, she called my brother and I back in for a second darshan. So we got to have a moment just sitting there quietly with her. She doesn't talk. She's a Mona, sadhu, so she doesn't speak or anything. But we just sat there quietly with her. And she didn't used to be Mona, but at least she was observing it at this time when we went there. And she kind of looked at us a little bit, and it was very penetrating. If you ever had someone with that kind of realization look at you, and I know Bill has, it's very naked and exposed and vulnerable feeling, because you know that they're seeing everything about you in that regards. So and then yeah, then that kind of finished the day there. We said goodbye to everybody. Everybody had a good cry, and we went back to our little hotel in Mumbai, and got ready for all the rest of our adventures. So that's our story with her.
Wow, that's two stories I wanted to make sure got saved, in case you go into a cave and never come out again. It was even as good as the first time you told it, and I remember it to this day. So I hope that people will get a chance if they want to learn more. But actually, if people want to hear more of your stories and stuff, they just got to let me know, and we can share some more on YouTube. But
Sure.
but this was an important one because I think it illustrates that there's people out there that believe stuff in the Bible or in the old days, in Antiquity, way back things happen, but they don't see that miracles and great spiritual beings are still walking amongst us, and it happens every day. Of course, me and you know it happens all the time, but there's a lot
Mhm.
of people out there that don't have these glimpses. So it's really nice that you shared that. I appreciate that. Do you have an organization or a website or an email address or anything you want people to get a hold of you? Or
Yeah, you can go to there's a website where I do a lot of teaching on philosophy and meditation, and it's threeawakenings.com. It's the number three and then awakenings.com. There's also a SoundCloud for Three Awakenings, and the email threeawakenings@gmail.com. It's a pretty small operation, so don't expect anything too shiny or flashy. But if someone wants to get a hold of me or they want to listen, I think I have probably 80 or 100 hours of audio teachings and lectures up on SoundCloud for anybody who wants to listen.
thank you. And what we're going to do for those people that don't take notes like me, uh, Chris is going to send me all that information. I'm going to put it in the description of this video below, so you'll be able to find them and get a hold of them. Um, we will continue this talk privately, and this video goes off. But to the rest of you, I hope this whets your appetite. Seek your dreams, literally. Seek your dreams.
Thank you, Bill.
God bless you.